Okay, so I'm back. Just a quick break. Anyways, so we're talking about how strong Sherry was for me, why she was struggling with her own grief as well. Her and my dad had a very special relationship. He filled a role for her that she did not have with her own dad. And she always felt like he kind of adopted her as his own daughter, and that's an amazing thing. And he loved her that way, and they had a very special relationship because of that. Um, so dealing with the grief of dad's passing, like I said, was a lot harder. Um, and we, I'm was set as his executor and his representative, and um, going through all of that stuff. And I'd watched my wife do this with her mom the year before, and so I kind of had an idea what we were up against. But what I didn't count on was going through all this stuff when dad had passed, all of his stuff. He had moved in, and the I don't know if it was a blessing or not, but this is a man who had traveled the whole world with his military career. And now at the age of 72, his life has been shrunk down to 20 or 25 boxes, small boxes worth of stuff. And it just seemed, I don't want to say sad, it's not the right word, but just seemed surprising. But we had, I mean, his room, his clothes, and his bed, and all the things that he held precious. And the thing is that you have the funeral, you have the visitations, you have the funeral, you have the dinners, you have all that stuff, and then everybody goes home, and you have everything else still left in your house as reminders that he's not there anymore. You walk by his room and you see the empty bed, and you see all the medical equipment, and you go, okay, I got to go through that at some point. Well, true to my upbringing, it's let's move on. And so within a couple of days, I had to be moving on. So I was going through his room and getting his clothes out, and making arrangements for his bed, and making arrangements for his medical equipment. And that kind of got me through the first day or two or three, I guess, maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a week. So that I had something to do. The problem is when you don't have something to do, your mind takes over, right? And so, like I said, I'm not prone to depression, um, but I am prone to dark places sometimes. But this time, I believe it was a full fledged kind of depression for about 3 months. And I think we're on the upswing of it, of getting out of it. Um, you just get to that point where you're just exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually. You just don't have time. You don't have the energy, really. Not that you don't have time, you don't have the energy to do anything because you're carrying this grief. And I'm like, how do I deal with this grief of all of this stuff is now kind of piled back on things that I felt like I had handled before. But with dad's passing, it kind of just opened them back up again. Um, but you do get to that point where you want to isolate yourself from the rest of the world. So you're kind of like, um, I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to. I don't want to. It just takes too much energy. It drains me too fast. Um, I definitely don't want to deal with other people's problems. Um, and I really don't want other people to see me. I want to grieve in private. I want to grieve with just my wife, and who I can trust implicitly with everything and anything. Um, and so you internalize and you discuss and we talk and that kind of stuff. And you have those moments where you are just, yeah, you just break down. And, thank God I had somebody to break down with. um, we were watching stupid PBS. I don't know why I watch PBS, right? No kidding. I know I watch PBS. I love it, right? So they had um, this is after Christmas, and this is like, I don't know, middle of January. And on PBS they have, I can't remember the guy's name. Anyways, he does a lot of touring in Europe, and so he does a lot of travel in Europe. And so he was doing this video or this show traveling in Europe during Christmas time, and that was one of the probably the most memorable times of my life is as a kid growing up is in Germany is during the Christmas time, right? And so you'd have in these German villages, you've had what they call the Christkindlmarkt or the Christmas markets, and it's just very festive, and that always stuck with me in my memory as childhood memories growing up. And so he did this half an hour show going through the different countries in Europe and how they see Christmas and how they handle it and all the traditions, and it broke me. And Sherry and I are there, and I'm just like, I miss him, because I wouldn't have any of those memories if it wasn't for him. And so I'm like at a loss on how to handle that grief, and I'm just like, what do I do, God? How do I deal with this? What do I do with this? Because now, on top of that, again, we get back to that idea that, you're not a kid anymore. Dad's not there. You don't have him to call for advice anymore. There's no backup. You're it, right? So you find yourself assuming the role that Dad had for me. I am now in that role. I'm in that role for my kids, because my kids are now grown and gone, and so it's a shift in how you see things, and you're like, am I really ready to take on the world this way? And I'm almost 50 years old. Am I really ready to see the world this way and take it on and handle it that way? But then how do I deal with that grief? How do you process it? Where do you put it? What's the perspective to have? And that's probably the hardest part for me with any kind of depression, is I lose perspective. And that's difficult. When you start losing perspective, you start losing your wisdom, and you start losing your coping skills when you lose perspective. And so, like I said, that grief with Dad was a little different. My grieving vessel, or whatever you want to call it, did not drain the way that it should have. It was enough to set it over the top. And you get to that point where you're just functioning, and you're just surviving. And I hate just surviving. It's just not a good place to be. And you're like, okay, how do I get out of this? And do I even want to get out of this? It's going to take too much energy to get out of this. And that's the hard part. Like I said, you still had all of his stuff at the house to go through. So we had all of his old books and his Bibles and his music and his guitars and his clothes and all of his own sentimental items and tons of pictures that he had. And you have to deal with all the well-wishers, and that's, I think that was probably the hardest part, is, people are concerned about you, and there's no doubt they're concerned about you, and you understand that, and they don't really know what to say to you. They really don't know what to tell you, and you get all the churchies or all the normal, compassionate, empathetic, comments and suggestions, oh, you need to make sure you talk to somebody, you need to make sure that you're able to grieve, and this, and you know what, that's great, and I appreciate it, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help when you're in the fire. When you're in the fire, all the great intentions in the world don't help, and you're not even entirely sure what would help. But it's just a tough place to be, and you don't want to be offensive to them, but you really want to say, you know what, you're not here, you don't know what it's like, because grief is very personal to people, and they treat it differently, and most of the time you just want somebody just to hang out with you and not need anything from you, and just put their arm around you and just say, you know what, it's not going to be okay, but you'll get through it. God will get you through it. You just got to hang in there. And life's going to suck for a while, but you'll come out on the other side. And you know that, but right there in the moment. There's a song by Jason Gray called Not Right Now. And has that has helped quite a bit. And if you're curious about it, you should go look it up. It's a wonderful, wonderful song, and it just hits right to the point about somebody that's in grief, that's in crisis, and yeah, just go listen to it. Anyways, so that's the fourth event, and and I don't know that I'm totally over it yet. Obviously, it's still very, very close and very raw. But I struggle with it, and I walked with it for a long time with that grief, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what is this thing, God? What is this thing called, this grief thing that I've got going on? I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to get rid of it. I don't know, is there anybody that would even understand it? I don't know, right? And so I kind of made this agreement with Sherry that if 30 days, I think this was probably the beginning of January, and I said, listen, if by the end of the month I'm not feeling any better, not doing any better, then yes, we will go see professional counseling and see what we can do with that, because I was totally out of whack. I'm usually upbeat, I'm usually very outgoing, and yeah, no, not at all. I was just functioning, and that was really about it. And again, Sherry's the strongest woman I know, and praise God for God bringing her into my life and giving her the strength to stay. And she's been very, very patient and very, very gracious with me. But she also knew that I hadn't been through this yet. So anyways, I've kind of lost my train of thought on this one. Anyways, so that was the fourth grieving event, is with Dad, and that event's still not over with, right? It's still too fresh and too new, and I don't know that it will ever be over with, because the hard part is I start to see now that Dad's gone, more of my mannerisms and little things that I do that really remind me of him now, and his death was a wake-up call, I think, for all of us, because his diseases could have been preventable. But Dad didn't care, and so that's the hard part to kind of make sense of as well. So anyways, okay, let's leave that there for now. I don't want to, we can go down a million different rabbit trails there. We'll leave that there for the fourth grieving event. It's broken into 2 videos, so anyways, leave that there. The next video, I want to talk about the conversation that God had with me about the grief, and it's a very interesting perspective I had never really thought about before, but it did help. I mean, it was like, I won't say instantaneous, but it was like, wow, okay, I think I get that, God. I think I understand that. So stay tuned. We'll get to that one here shortly, before too long. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for hanging in. Ciao, Bella.